Hey everybody, I want to talk about a product and platform that I absolutely love and our latest sponsor, Interseller, the prospecting and outreach platform of choice for recruiters and sellers. Whether you're doubling down on business development or recruiting talent, Interseller does all the heavy lifting of finding contact data, automating the email and follow-up process, and syncs all that rich data into 20 plus CRM and ATS platforms. Reach out now and get going on a 2-week free trial and let them know you heard about it from Adam on the podcast today. Check out the link on the website. Appreciate it.
Welcome to the podcast, where we introduce you to incredible humans who share their journeys with the mission to inspire you to harness your own inner tenacity to drive your life and career forward. And now, your host, Adam Posner.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast, where I bring you the best and the brightest in the world of business, marketing, entrepreneurship, and personal growth to help you harness your inner tenacity and drive your career forward. I am excited, folks. This is a great guest. Today on the podcast is Jay Rosenzweig, an internationally renowned social impact entrepreneur, humanitarian, trained lawyer, executive recruiter, and leadership strategist. Phew, it's a lot right there. And he is the founder of Rosenzweig & Company. Jay is an expert in designing, building, and attracting world-class teams. He also consults large global corporations, emerging growth to mid-sized businesses, professional service firms, pretty much anybody who could use his expertise. And he also invests and advises in several leading-edge tech companies across North America and beyond. But the part that I love most about Jay, which we will dig into, is he has served global human rights causes for well over 2 decades and has been internationally recognized for the annual Rosenzweig Report on Equity, which he has published for the past 17 years. And this report has received endorsements and contributions from a wide range of leaders and personalities such as Justin Trudeau, Alyssa Milano, Sheryl Sandberg, Mark Cuban, Deepak Chopra, Van Jones, and many, many more. You get the point. So, Jay, we have at least 5 different careers to cover and a lifetime of interesting stories. So let's get to it. Jay, welcome to the podcast.
Happy to be here. Thank you, Adam.
And thank you so much for joining me. You and I have been building up. Well, first, kudos to my friend and your friend Chris Adamo for connecting us. You are somebody that I've admired. Someone that I've admired, Jay, from afar through social media, through LinkedIn, through the work that you're doing, both on the humanitarian side as well on the recruiting side. And it's important for folks like myself who are solopreneurs to find mentors from afar, people that we see doing things the right way. So thank you so much for connecting and being open to building a relationship.
Thank you, Adam. Flattered to be here and looking forward to digging in with you.
So before I hit the rewind button here, topic du jour, I want your hot take on Kanye West and his comments.
Well, look, it's complicated. He's clearly someone who needs help. He's to me, he's not mentally stable. I'm not a psychiatrist. I haven't spent a ton of time with him, but it seems self-evident. He's talked about his own struggles from a mental health point of view. The problem is we can't ignore the words that he said. We can't sort of slough it off and say, well, you know, here's a person who's hurting. Here's a person who has issues. Let's just ignore it, because he does have millions and millions of followers, right, and millions of admirers who might take his words seriously. I mean, what the heck does DEFCON mean? Or what did he mean by DEFCON?
It's scary.
Right? It's scary stuff, and it needs to be dealt with, and it needs to be stamped out. So we need to speak out against it. I've been doing that, been speaking out against the rise of anti-Semitism in general. So that's kind of my take, you know, in a nutshell. I mean, we could do an hour just on that.
Oh,
but that's kind of in sum, that's kind of my take.
And I echo your thoughts on that one. And there's absolutely no place on that. So I want to hit the rewind button. Thank you so much for sharing and being open about that. And I want to hit the rewind button. We go deep on this show, and I love history of where my folks come from. And you're originally from Montreal. And you watch your dad Meyer build an electrical contracting company from scratch without a college education. Tell us how growing up, with your father influenced your entrepreneurial spirit, your drive, and, eventually, you're very well, formally educated. why go down that route? There's a lot of questions there. I don't normally do that on the first
one. So my grandparents are from Eastern Europe. Both sets, both my mom and my dad's parents, both came from kind of the Romania area. Let's say Romania, but the borders kept, shifting, and they continued to shift. Russia, Romania kind of thing. They all came on a boat with nothing. My mom's dad arrived after his bar mitzvah to make hay for the family. He got all odd jobs as waiter. He made pickles and wine for Moishe's, which was a very famous steakhouse in Montreal.
Oh yeah.
And they all lived in that area. And my dad's dad was an entrepreneur. He actually opened up a women's apparel store on St. Lawrence Street and was quite successful, but got really decimated by the Great Depression. And that affected my father, I think, pretty deeply. He wasn't able to go to university, but he was always fascinated by electronics and electricity. He ended up, I think, also kind of at the age of 14 or so, walking up and down the streets with wires and broken radios offering to help people to fix their electronics. He eventually, during the war, was recruited to help develop complex switchboards for battleships. And a year later, he came back and worked for a big electrical contracting company for a year to learn the business, and started his own business around the age of 20. It's called Utica Electric, and eventually bought a duplex in an area called Ville Saint Laurent in Montreal. Rented the upstairs and the downstairs. I lived in that house for the first 25 years of my life. And he built an office out of a piece of the garage. There was nothing fancy or wasteful at all about his running of the business. And for better or for worse, there was a lot of business talk at the dinner table. And I kind of soaked it all in, and got that entrepreneurial bug in me. I think my dad felt that with a university education, I might be able to have a greater level of stability, a greater level of security. So he was thrilled when I went to university and went on to law school at McGill, and that's kind of the story of my dad's influence and kind of the entrepreneurial blood that I was born with,
and the feeling deep inside that anything was possible, right? To see an immigrant family come here and make it and be successful. So this is a fun little story. You almost missed the opportunity to attend McGill. I'd love if you could share that little tidbit.
Yeah, good research. So I did a philosophy degree, and by the end of my philosophy degree, I had pretty good marks, and I ended up applying to a number of law schools across Canada. My first choice was to continue on and go to McGill for many, many reasons, including financial. And I got into a bunch of law schools pretty early. And here I am concurrently backpacking with a buddy of mine through Europe. And I hadn't heard from McGill.
You're like, come on, I should be a preferred list at this point.
You would think.
You would think.
So my parents were anxiously taking in the mail to see if I'd get into McGill. And they subsequently went on a little bit of a vacation themselves and asked our neighbors to take in the mail. So, and specifically to look out for letters from McGill. Long story short, my neighbors call my parents on vacation and tell them Jay didn't get in to McGill. So we decided I'd go to University of Ottawa Law School. I'm told while I'm backpacking through Europe, I leave Europe early. We were about to go to Turkey. My friend ended up continuing on into Turkey. I flew home. My parents very kindly went to Ottawa, got me a nice apartment. I came home, checked out my apartment in Ottawa. It looked great. and I was set on going to Ottawa. What I decided to do, and this is kind of a thread throughout my life, is just for self-edification, just so that I can learn from my loss or from my defeat in this case. Call the dean of the law school at McGill and ask if she might be so kind as to meet with me to go through where I fell short.
You want to understand why you didn't get in.
Exactly, but not in a defensive way, just for my own self-edification. And I made that clear with her. So I show up at her office. I don't know what I was thinking. I hadn't shaven from my Europe trips. I had this big beard. I had a white tank top on, jean shorts, cut out jeans, with
wish
frills,
we had
with
that
white
picture.
frills.
Wish we had that picture to include on the show graphics here.
Yeah. So I walk in. The dean opens up my file and she says, "Who told you didn't get in?" So I explained the story. She's like, "I don't know what your neighbor read, but you're actually still on a waiting list here. I'm not supposed to interview prospective students, but while you're here, tell me about yourself." So we had a really nice conversation, really hit it off. And the program that I was applying for would give me 2 law degrees in 4 years, both a common law and a civil law degree, which really allows you to practice anywhere. So she asked me, "Which stream would you want?" So I said, "Well, I'd like to start off in either common or civil." So I said, "I'd like the common law stream, ideally." But so she said, "Well, that's impossible." And to which I said, "Well, I'll take anything. Like, civil's fine. In the end, you get both degrees anyway."
Right.
Next day, I'm lying in bed. The phone rings. "Jay? Yes, it's Dean Juk here. I'm pleased to tell you that you've gotten to our law school, and I've given you common law."
Look at that. So what's the lesson for everyone out there? Is it to always question? Is it do your due diligence? Trust your gut. What's the big takeaway on this one?
To me, the big takeaway is to continuously try to learn even from your losses. Continuously reach out for feedback. Don't be defensive, and be open, because what you might think is a no may not actually be a no. In this case, it was absolutely not a no, but in some cases, no's are a lot softer than you might think. So persevere.
Not every no is the same way.
Yeah.
The feedback one is interesting, and we'll get to that. We'll put a pin in that one for a moment when we get into the recruiting side of your life. But I want to just kind of close the loop here, because you followed down the path of law. And correct me if I'm wrong. When was that point when you said, "I don't know if this is for me in the long run"? Because that's a career. This is a major pivot. We're not talking, "Hey, listen, I was a kindergarten teacher. Now I want to be a 4th grade teacher." We're talking about a complete profession change, a real pivot.
Corporate law in law school, I found to be very boring. I actually, even though I'm in business, I often found the study of business in general, and even as a corollary, business law, to be boring. I had a philosophy background. That's something that has always permeated within me, whether educationally or not. And it was more the philosophical side that I found to be interesting, even in law. And that geared me in a direction of criminal law and really understanding issues of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms and constitutional issues, things like the contradiction or apparent contradiction between free speech and hate propaganda, things of that nature. So I ended up articling in the area of criminal law. And I have deep, deep respect for criminal defense lawyers, because they're really the lifeblood to our liberties and freedoms. I think they often get a bad rap. So I went that route. But what I found out practicing day in and day out in the context of criminal law is that it's a pretty rough world. It's a very dirty world in a lot of ways.
Right.
And I realized that I didn't want to do that on a day-to-day basis over the long term.
Did it not feel good inside, Jay? Like, what was it? What was it? Did it not? Where did it not resonate? Was it within your heart, your soul, your relationships, internal, external?
The approach to, I don't want to divulge too much, but the approach to,
as much as you're open to sharing,
to trying to help clients was very much on the line in certain cases, including on the side of the prosecution. So I was faced with a moral dilemma that I won't get too deeply into as a student on a case that wasn't a severe case, but it was a case where I had to handle a scenario where what was at stake really was a kid having a criminal record permanently. And what I was told by one of the partners was, the police don't lie some of the time. They don't lie a bunch of the time. They lie all the time. And sometimes, when we're fighting in that kind of fight and the liberty of our clients are at stake, you got to fight fire with fire. I'm not implying that I was asked to tell an untruth, but you're very, very close to the line.
Your moral compass is, you question, the moral compass at times.
Exactly.
Or you're asked to question your own moral compass.
Exactly. And it's not that I don't, as I say, respect defense lawyers really, really deeply. I just felt it was a world I didn't necessarily want to be in. But I did continue in the law to a degree, and in a big picture sense, in that I developed a really great relationship with a law professor at McGill University named Erwin Kotler, who is an international human rights champion. He represented people like Nelson Mandela back in the day, and Natan Sharansky, and went on to become Canada's Attorney General and Minister of Justice. And he ultimately, when he left the Canadian Parliament, started an organization called the Raoul Wallenberg Center for Human Rights. And he asked me to join his board, and I ended up becoming the chair of his board to this day. And we do have a legal staff. We have legal counsel. I'm not digging in deeply on the legal aspects or the legal details of the files, but it's something that I care very deeply about. In fact, it took me to Ukraine a few weeks ago, representing the organization and legal filings that our staff developed, including analyses of the Russian Federation's breaches of the Genocide Convention, statutes to set up a special tribunal to investigate crimes of aggression, UN resolutions, and a 10-point action plan, which we recommend the community of democracies implement. So I did keep my hand in law, and it's certainly highly related to the area of human rights and criminality, in a way that I'm comfortable.
And in a way that really is a thread of your humanitarian efforts and the incredible work that you do. But just for a quick moment there, I want to pause, and I'd greatly appreciate the work that you're doing. The fight in the Ukraine is something that's close to me and my family, my wife's family, being from there. What is going on in the ground as of 2 weeks ago? Well, it changed as of yesterday. There was an attack yesterday and this morning again, I believe in Kiev. But what's tell us, please share a little bit firsthand experience of the will of the people, because that's why they're winning this war.
That's absolutely right. On the Russian side, you have a bunch of kids who are confused,
brainwashed,
unmotivated, not understanding really why they're there. Whereas you have Ukrainians who are very clear in terms of their mission. We've been invaded, and we're going to kick you guys the hell out because you have no business trying to take over our country. And the resolve is palpable. The courageousness and resiliency of the Ukrainian people is just absolutely incredible. Anecdotally, what I was told was, so I was in Kyiv, which is under attack right now. And Kyiv was the first place that Russia attempted to occupy, and the world and including the United States and Russia itself, figured that Ukraine would fall pretty quickly once the capital was overtaken. And it was pretty dicey, I think, the first week. And as I understand it, the leadership went door to door to civilian homes and dropped off machine guns and recipes for Molotov cocktails and said, we need you to the extent you're able to and you have the courage, get out there and fight. And they did, and they were miraculously able to push the Russians back. So when I was there, I was told being in Kyiv is as if you're in California and the fighting is in Texas. So I felt relatively safe, although, of course, I knew that anything can turn on a dime.
Any moment.
As you could see, if I'd be there right now, I'd be obviously under a barrage of rockets that are flying down. The other thing I'll say is in terms of the administration, because I met a lot of the leadership, almost every sentence begins with the words, when we win, when we emerge victorious, ... And they're not bluffing. Like, for them, it's like a fact. Like, there's no other way. And it's just absolutely remarkable. Yeah.
And incredible. And kudos for the effort on that side. How did your family feel about you going over there?
So it varied. My son was like, "That's so cool."
And how old is he?
That's so amazing. That's so amazing that you're doing this. So he's turning 20 in January. He's 19. He's in his second year of engineering at Queen's. My daughters were a bit more tentative but supportive. And my wife listened very carefully as I did deep analyses of the security situation on the ground, where exactly I'd be going from the point of view from you arrive in Poland and go to the
you drove in, right?
The Poland, Ukraine. Yeah, we drove from Poland we flew to Poland, drove from Poland to the Ukrainian border. How that was all going to work? Who was in the security detail? What's their qualifications? What's the route? What are the levels of risk? So she was listening very intently to all my analyses. And at the end of the day, although outside members of our immediate family gave me a lot of grief, and they were actually pretty pissed off at me for going, my wife finally came to me and said, "Jay, I really believe you should go. I've thought about it. I've listened to your analysis. This is something too important for you not to do." They say Raoul Wallenberg. Not that I would ever compare myself by any means to that hero. One of the biggest things he had to overcome, and one of the things that people respect him most for, is many of his family didn't speak to him because he was going into the heart of the Holocaust. When he had no skin in the game, as Professor Kotler describes, one man with enough compassion to care and courage to act really transformed universes. But Wallenberg said, "I had no choice. There was no choice but to help."
Yeah. And for anyone out there who's not familiar with the Raoul Wallenberg story, I'll link it up in the show notes here, and you could dig in and really understand that plight.
Hey everybody, first I'd like to thank you all for spending time with me and my guest on the podcast. This show is my canvas to showcase amazing people from the world of recruiting, entrepreneurship, and leadership, and unpack their career journeys for everyone to learn from. But this show is also a business generator for me, as well as creating thought leadership and endless amazing content. And I've taken what I've learned in the past 3 years and over 200 recorded and 100 live shows and distilled it down into a digital playbook that I call the Pause Course. Now you could learn how I build, manage, and produce the podcast and use it to drive real business development and relationships. Today, I'm sharing all of my secrets behind the podcast, and you can get it all at thepausecourse.com. This course is for anyone, whether you're starting out or an advanced podcaster, you're using it for B2B and B2C. It's filled with all of my insights, learnings, tips, tricks, and templates. So get it now at thepausecourse.com and learn all my secrets. Thanks.
Going back to one of the key takeaways of having such a supportive partner and wife in your life. How is she part of that transition into the world of recruiting?
So she played a pivotal role. If it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be in recruiting. So as I alluded to, I realized that the day-to-day street law, if you will, criminal law, wasn't for me. And I was thinking about alternatives to the practice of law in general, while keeping my hand in the law, in a sense, through the human rights work. During those days, it was the late 90s, you look for jobs in the newspaper. There's a career section. You open up the career section. And so my wife's looking through the newspaper, and she sees in the career section an ad which says, looking for a director of business affairs for a large entertainment corporation, looking for a lawyer with 12 to 15 years of experience, which I didn't have close to, apply to the following recruiting firms. The following recruiting firm. I knew nothing about recruiting, but I figured, I guess recruiters find people jobs in business. So I'll apply to that job. Turned out to be IMAX, in the hopes that I can hustle my way into this recruiting firm and they can help me find a job.
You're gonna backdoor it, Jay.
Backdoor it. You got it.
Yeah.
So I apply, and an associate from that firm calls me and says, we got your application. You're way, way, way underqualified for the job in terms of years of experience, but you have a very interesting background. Tell me about yourself. So I did. And he said, you got a great way about you on the phone. You obviously have, some smarts. We're looking for an associate here. Would you be interested in applying? So at first I thought, what am I going to be a headhunter for? Just became, a lawyer not that long ago. But the more research I did into the high end of the recruiting business, and the more I looked into the backgrounds of these partners at the firm, incredibly impressive backgrounds, I thought to myself, hey, maybe this is kind of one of the world's, nicest little secrets. I'll give it a shot.
Don't tell everybody.
Just tell everyone here on the podcast.
There you go. Yeah, we can edit this part out. So anyway, I took the job and took to the business really, really quickly, helped grow that business to the point where Korn Ferry, the largest high-end business in the world in our sector, bought us, became one of the youngest partners globally at the world's largest firms. And the rest is history. Eventually, I broke away and started my own firm and to compete with the big firms. And that's where we're at today.
And that's where we're at today. And thank you for tying that piece up nicely, because it allows me to kind of dig in to a couple of things here. And you and I spoke about this on one of our first connection calls. How crazy was it to be one of the youngest partners at this giant firm, and you were still relatively new to recruiting, and you were kind of in a right place at the right time opportunity, let's call it what it is, or a couple of those key lessons of jumping into giant, let's call it what it is. Korn Ferry is a corporate beast of a recruiting firm. They senior level executive search, multiple sectors. What were a couple of those early, let's call it what it is, kind of missteps that you had to learn the hard way in a big organization?
Well, one of the things about me, first of all, it was wonderful. I learned a ton. Offices in every major city in the world. Business was just flowing in. I was in Canada, where I still am. Head office in the U.S. of some company needs a head of Canada. It just gets sent off to us to execute. So there was a lot of great learnings, resources at your fingertips, always wonderful from that point of view. I'm a very apolitical type, though. And I'm not one to, if someone makes a joke around the boardroom table, even if it's a boss, most people will kind of, force a laugh or whatever. I'll grin pleasantly, but, I'm just not the type. It's just not in me to kind of kiss butt, if you will, and stuff of that nature. So that might have been used against me a little bit. The other thing politics. Is, the politics, and there's a lot of bureaucracy in big firms. So you're having meetings for the sake of meetings. You're having sector meetings and functional meetings and conferences, which are just
meetings for meetings,
just often a waste. Yeah. And the other thing is when you're such a big firm and you have specialists in various sectors, those specialists are conflicted all over the place. You're not allowed to recruit from a client of yours. So if you're a real estate specialist and you're working for 5 of the top real estate companies in any given sector, you have one hand tied behind your back when you're doing a recruiting project. So there's a lot of positive in the big firms, but a lot of stuff that really wasn't for me. And I'm kind of my own person. So I felt that if I could start a business high end to compete with the firms and eliminate a lot of the pieces that actually adversely affect the client, that I can have a leg up and have a successful business. And
I love that
and
mentality.
that's what I ended up doing. Yeah.
I love the mentality, and it's kind of what I did, along the same ways of how I saw there was an opportunity to go out on my own, remove a lot of the BS and do things my way. And it just kind of worked out that. But let's talk about recruiting for a moment here. This show's origins are in recruiting. What advice? I mean, in this day and age, the market has changed. The technology has changed since you were out there. The barrier to entry is extremely low. I think that a lot of recruiters, especially junior on, just rely on the spray and pray of modern CRM and not forming those relationships, those real deep relationships. But what advice would you give newer recruiters out there to be genuinely successful for a long-term career in this industry?
I think it's really important to first of all establish great relationships. The sort of arm's length spray and pray is not the best method to uncover the best candidates. It's not the best way, clearly, to persuade an individual to spend time with a client. So the relationship piece, technology is table stakes. Mm-hmm. With LinkedIn and all the other technologies we all have at our fingertips, it's made it easier to find individuals, easier to uncover individuals, and easier to be able to reach out to individuals. Then the question is, how do you differentiate yourself? What we try to do is spend a ton of time with our client, not even talking about the role at play for a very long period of time in the initial relationship building and foundational piece. What we want to understand is what are the business objectives really underlying one's decision to make a hire. And what we then do is marry a research strategy designed to meet the business issues at play. And if you take that kind of approach, you will uncover unusually interesting candidates that may not come from the obvious places you may have thought of. And that's a really, really big deal. I remember a number of years ago, a big banking client saying to me, we've used all the big firms for a senior marketing role, and it never seems to work out. And my question to them was, where are these marketing folks coming from?
Banks.
And they said, the answer was from other banks, because right away, knee-jerk reaction, let's find
Let me go
someone
look
from
at the
another
competitor.
Yeah. Then the question was, what's most important to you? Like, what aspect of your business is most important to you when you think of marketing? And the answer was retail. So my answer to them from that point was, if retail is important to you, and you feel that the banks aren't innovating from a retail point of view, we should be looking at the real retailers like the Gap and whoever, right?
Different
who
sectors,
have made
skill
innovations.
set, different sector.
They're years, exactly, and they're years ahead of the banks in terms of marketing innovation within the retail.
Course.
You have thousands and thousands of people at the bank who understand banking. You need someone with the functional expertise. So we ended up going out and finding them someone with true retail experience, and our client told us that it was the best hire he ever made.
And that's really the way to separate yourself in recruiting. But it also takes, let's be honest here, it also takes a client who is open to that mindset who doesn't
Correct.
want to just check the boxes and have the similar. If you really want to innovate, you need to look outside the sector, attitude, aptitude, and the skill set. I want to spend a few minutes, and thank you for sharing that, talking a little bit about the philanthropic humanitarian work that you do. It's something that I really love to do when I talk to guests like yourself who make it not just this is a part of your life, Jay. And talk to us a little bit about the origins of the annual Rosenzweig report and what is the impact and purpose?
Right. So 2 years into having my own firm, this was 2006. My professor and dear friend Erwin Kotler is in Parliament, and he is the first man on the Women's Caucus. He transformed our Supreme Court into the most gender representative in the world. And it got me thinking, what's the status of women here in Canada in business? And much like in the United States, all public companies have to disclose the compensation of their CEO, CFO, and the next three, next 3 to 5 most senior executives. And so what I decided to do is look at the 100 top Canadian companies and measure the percentage of women in these top roles. So what percentage of women are in the top 500 or so roles? And the first year I did the report, I determined that the percentage was 4.6%, which was extremely low. I thought the numbers would be low. I didn't realize they were that low. And from then on, I determined
you didn't
that
think it was going to be single digits.
I didn't. And so what I determined was I'm going to continue doing this study year after year until hopefully one day I work my way out of a job, really putting a mirror to corporate Canada to understand exactly which companies have who, which companies don't have any women, which have improved, which haven't, year after year after year. So we're now embarking on our 18th annual report. Eventually, I began bringing in influencers, as you alluded to earlier in the call, to provide comments, quotes, endorsements in order to amplify the discussion even more and galvanize their own communities. And last year, I also integrated the NFT world and the Web3 world with it. We had Boss Beauties on the cover page.
Fantastic.
And we're beginning to formulate what we're going to be doing this year. But it's really to advocate for women in leadership roles in general.
I love it. And just from a business perspective, out of pure curiosity, did
Yes.
any of those companies that you called out for having less representation actually hire you to recruit for them?
Yeah, they did. They did. The ones that didn't have anybody in terms of women in their leadership ranks, as well as organizations who had women leadership who appreciated the work that I did, ended up coming to me and giving me a whole bunch of business. So it has had business benefits, even though I wasn't looking for that corollary benefit. It has happened.
And it's given you tremendous access to the biggest players, and I don't like to use the word players, but the biggest people in the world. I mean, I've seen recent photos with you with Hillary Clinton and Deepak Chopra, but one that stood out to me, and going back to the Ukraine, was with President Zelensky's wife, the First Lady. What was that experience like? And what was that? As much as you're open to sharing, what that conversation was.
It was absolutely remarkable. So I go to Ukraine. I meet with the leadership. I present our documentation, which they were very appreciative of, and we continue to have Zooms with them and work on issues such as justice and reconstruction and sanctions, etc. And a couple of weeks later, it's the United Nations General Assembly in New York. So I was invited to participate and potentially curate events for the First Lady of Ukraine. And
that's incredible.
Both pretty small, really tight, highly curated events. So one was at the Met in the Lincoln Center, which I didn't have a lot to do with in terms of organizing. And it was just a very, very special event with incredible interactions. Hillary Clinton was there, and the Secretary of State of the UK, and people like Jimmy Fallon and Matt Damon, and a number of influencers, and it was really great in terms of bringing attention to the cause of the Ukrainian people. And the First Lady was introducing her new foundation, which she set up. And then the next day, we were able to have a nicely curated breakfast at JP Morgan, which happened through a phone call I made to my dear friend Carol Stern. Carol Stern ran UNICEF for a number of years, UNICEF USA, and now she's the executive director of the Walton Foundation. The Waltons, of course, own Walmart. I indicated to her that we're looking to do something for the First Lady of Ukraine. And Carol's like, well, that sounds amazing. I'm going to call my friend Mary, who runs wealth management at JP Morgan. And before we knew it, we had a private little breakfast for her. Jamie Dimon and his wife were there, a number of their highest net
It's incredible.
worth clients. I brought Bob Ray, the Canadian ambassador to the United Nations, and millions of dollars is being raised now to help them with the ultimate reconstruction.
The power of connection, Jay. The power of connection. I mean, I can answer this. That is definitely at the top of your list of superpowers. And how do you use that for good? I assume you had a couple of minutes with her. Hopefully you did. Would you share what?
I did. Yeah. Basically, I spoke with her both at the Met Gala and the next morning at the breakfast, and just reiterated the support that I have for the Ukrainian people and government personally. I summarized for her the people and administration leaders who I met while in Ukraine, and the various documents that they have given our work. And she just indicated how appreciative she was of the support we're showing, including the Canadian people in general and the Canadian government, which I think in a lot of ways is punching above its weight in terms of the assistance that we're providing. And the Prime Minister of Ukraine was at the gala as well, and he specifically said to me how appreciative he is of the Canadian people and government. So it was really a wonderful interaction.
Well, definitely keep up the good work there. So Jay, let's bring it home. I mean, you and I could talk for hours, wealth of information. We could go down rabbit holes. We could make U-turns, wrong turns, right turns, all different directions, and really blow conversations out, which I hope to do in the near future. But what's one lesson a early Jay could maybe teach a Jay right now? Maybe something you forgot about. Maybe you're like, I kind of strayed away from that.
I think it's something that I've done my whole life, but it doesn't hurt to be reminded of it. And it doesn't hurt to remind your audience of it. And that is to keep going. No matter what, keep going. And if you're alive and breathing, pat yourself on the back, because look at all of the ups and downs you've had throughout your life. We all have. And you're here and you're standing and you're breathing. And the most important thing in this life is to actually live a full-fledged life. That's the purpose. That's the whole game. Live a full-fledged life.
Speaking of living a full-fledged life, Jay, just to show you how deep we go here on the podcast, my show producer wanted me to ask you, when are we getting a follow-up to the classic Right Here that you did with Aon Clark? And I'm going to link that one up in the YouTube for everyone to watch it. Jay rocks the mic on that one. Tell us a little bit about that. Brief moment into the world of singing.
So music is a major passion of mine, which we could do a whole podcast on. I've been playing piano since I'm like 5 years old.
It's fantastic, by the way.
Thank you. I love writing music. I met Aon Clark when he actually performed at my middle daughter's bat mitzvah party, and I was blown away by his talent. Turns out that Aon grew up in Toronto in the music scene. He was actually in Drake's first band. He was the vocalist. Drake was the rapper. But I think ultimately Drake's dad suggested to him, you know what, you should also sing. So that's kind of how things evolved with Drake. But Aon's got the most incredible voice. And so I approached him and said, it's my son's bar mitzvah party coming up soon, and I don't want to do the conventional speech. I want to write a song for him.
So good.
And so we sat down in the studio and we wrote a song. It was actually, I have a music writing partner. His name is Mitch Magnet. And Mitch Magnet, a while back before this happened, got new music equipment. And he did a sound check and just randomly sang a tune with some words. The tune and the words just sounded really amazing. So I called up my buddy Mitch and I said, you know what? I'm writing a song for my son. I love that thing you did in the sound check. He's like, are you kidding me? Like, that was just off the top of my head.
It was like a throwaway, right? Like he was just messing around.
I'm like, there's something very beautiful there. Would you mind if I took that and worked with Aeon and we wrote a full song out of it and performed it for my son? He's like, have at it. Like, I forgot about that,
That is
cool. And so that's what we did. And I unveiled the song for my son. The audience can see the YouTube of it happening live and the reaction that my son had. Yeah.
And you did not embarrass your son. That is the key for any dad here. So let's bring it home, Jay. This show is my masterclass. My personal masterclass. I get to interview incredible human beings like yourself. And I love to ask, what is the single greatest piece of advice you ever received that you take action on every day?
You can never control 100% what happens to you, what happens outside of you. But what you can control is the insides. Your experience of life, misery and joy, which is what it all boils down to, is all coming from the inside. And if you understand life from that perspective, you'll be able to handle anything that comes at you with the utmost of grace.
What's interesting about that one, and thank you for sharing that, is this is one that I keep hearing over and over again. And it's something that I personally need to do a better job of and hold myself accountable. How I handle personal, professional interactions, how I know that I could always be pushing myself to do and react better. So thank you so much for sharing that. And Jay, last but not least, you look back on your life, you look back on the good times, the hard times, the easy times, and all those times when you really needed to dig down deep inside and harness that inner tenacity to drive yourself forward, to keep things moving in the right direction, to do the best for your family and yourself. And on the flip side, Jay, when you want to show extreme gratitude for this life that you created, this family, and all the good that you're doing for this world, what keeps you in focus? Jay Rosenzweig, what is your North Star in life?
What keeps me focused is a zest for life, is understanding that we're only here for a very short period of time. Reminding ourselves, I think, of our mortality is the ultimate path to joy and living life to its fullest. And that's the perspective and North Star I bring.
I love it. Jay, this has been incredible. I want to thank you for your time, your vulnerability, your openness to sharing with me and my audience. And I truly look forward to continuing to build our relationship and how we can continue to add value for each other. Looking forward to meeting you in person down in Miami in a couple of weeks. Everyone, please, to learn more, check out www.jrosenzweig.com. Where else could folks find you? Where could they connect with you? Where could they learn more?
I think that's a great start. The jrosenzweig.com really takes you to a whole bunch of places and tabs and whatnot. So that's perfect.
You'll get there. Jay, thank you so much for joining me.
Have a great day. Thank you. Take care.
Awesome. And everyone out there, this is a good one. This is a great one. We went deep. We explored some areas that are very personal, very timely, what's going on in the world. Sharing means caring. If this episode meant something to you, please share it. It means the world to me. I want to thank everyone for joining me. You know where to find out more at thepodcast.com. Follow us on other social media channels. Remember, look out for one another. Take care of each other and catch us next week for another great episode of the podcast. Take care, everybody.
Wisdom is forever, but for us, it's time to go. Thank you for joining us. Luckily, we'll be back with our next episode soon, jam-packed with more incredible humans. Thank you for listening, subscribing, and sharing. To join the conversation, search The Podcast on LinkedIn. And to catch up on past episodes and more info, please visit www.thepodcast.com.